Good evening, General Sims.
Hi, Krewasky. Can you hear me, Krewasky?
Oh, yes, I can. Yeah, I already
Super.
said hello. Good evening, General Wiggins.
Good evening, Krewasky. How you doing?
I'm doing great, sir.
Krewasky, Tom Ram, can you see me okay?
Sir, I can see you great and I can hear you okay. How about you, Laura?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because all I got on my screen right now is these instructions on the captioning.
They're going to be coming down any second now. I just want to welcome all of our guests this evening. And before we get started, remind them one more time that tonight's presentation does utilize closed captioning. If you'd like to turn off those closed captions, you can use the instructions on your screen by clicking the live transcript button at the bottom and selecting hide subtitles. If you'd like to utilize the subtitles but change the size, you can also click on that screen and check subtitle settings, and that will adjust the size for you.
Well, what do you recommend? What do we do?
It's up to you. It's up to your discretion if you use them or not. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. The time is now 7 o'clock, so we're going to be getting started on tonight's presentation. My name is Laura. I'm the Public Programs Coordinator here at the 1st Division Museum, and I do want to welcome all of our guests. I do want to say a very special thank you to everybody who submitted questions. This conversation, as advertised, is going to focus on leadership. We received an overwhelming amount of questions from you, our guests, that we will be using to drive and inspire our conversation this evening. While we will not be able to cover all of the questions and all of the themes that you asked about this evening, we want to let you know that those questions did inspire us, and we're hoping to utilize them to inspire future conversations just like the one we're having tonight. But we have a lot of ground to cover this evening and a lot of people to hear from, so I want to get us started right away. And the first thing I want to do is introduce our moderator. I know him well. So I'd like to introduce to everybody our director, Krewasky Salter. Krewasky Salter is the executive director of the museums at Cantini Park, which does include the 1st Division Museum. He is a retired U.S. Army colonel who served 25 years on active duty. While on active duty, Krewasky taught at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and at the Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. He served as a senior observer controller at the National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California, and commanded a PAC-3 Patriot missile battalion that deployed under his command from Fort Bliss, Texas to the Far East. Krewasky is a graduate of the Infantry Officer Advanced Course and Ranger School. He holds a Master's of Strategic Studies from the Air War University and a master's and PhD from Florida State University with a concentration in military history and African American history. Dr. Salter culminated his military career as a senior staff officer at the Pentagon. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pass the mic over to Krewasky Salter.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Well, as I was walking over here, I counted up the fact that I am sitting in front of 17 stars. And so the last time I was around 17 stars, I was walking the halls of the Pentagon. But first of all, we have a distinguished panel here tonight, and I would like to reiterate what Laura said. We received an overwhelming number of questions, and as advertised, we really want to focus on the experience of these gentlemen in their command time in the 1st Infantry Division, and also talk about leadership while in the military and also in their civilian lives. So we'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible. But first of all, what I want to do is set the stage for our audience and talk about this group in front of us and the uniqueness. So first of all, I want to start with the fact that they are all American soldiers. So a lot of people have that in common. And then when you break it down and make that circle smaller, they are all combat veterans. And then if you make that circle just a little bit smaller, they are all general officers in the United States military who have served more than 30 years in the military. But the thing that they all have in common that makes that shot group a little smaller is they all have shared the call sign Danger 6. But as one of the generals mentioned to me, there is only one Danger 6 at once, and that is General Sims, who's in uniform, and all others have served as Danger 6. Now, what I want to do is, I know I'm not going to do this justice, but I am going to do my best to only take up about 6 to 9 minutes. That's a minute and a half at the most to give a quick bio, because you can see all of their bios online. And we're going to go in protocol order. We're going to start with General Sims. So General Sims is a 1991 graduate of the U.S. Military Academy, which means he has just gone over 30 years on active duty. He has served in multiple command and staff jobs throughout his career. He has deployed downrange in Afghanistan and Iraq multiple times, and you can read some of that on our internet. But right now, he is in command of the 1st ID, has been there for almost a year, if not over a year, and has about a year left on his command time. At the present moment, he has just brought a contingent of soldiers back from helping to inoculate American citizens in cities. He has soldiers deployed in Korea and the Far East, and also, in the Middle East, and also in Europe. And so we're going to talk about the complexities of commanding soldiers in that environment. Our next panelist is General Retired Vincent K. Brooks. He is a 1980 graduate of the United States Military Academy, and he just retired in 2019. So he served 39 years on active duty after graduating from the Military Academy, where he was the first African-American to hold the highest rank at the Military Academy. He too served in multiple command and staff positions and has been downrange in Kosovo and Afghanistan and Iraq, and also as a 4-star general served over the U.S. forces in the Far East region. In his private life, after service, he sits on at least 5 boards, and don't want to mention all of those to keep it short, but among some of the boards that he sits on is Diamondback Energy, Jacobs Incorporated, the Gary Sinise Foundation. He's a board of director, and he's also the chairman and president of the Korean Defense Veterans Association. And the reason we want to mention that with all of these gentlemen is we want to talk about their leadership after leaving the military. Our next panelist is Lieutenant General Retired Ronald L. Watts. Ronald L. Watts is a 1956 graduate of Pittsburgh College in the state of Kansas. He served 23 years on active duty after being an ROTC cadet. He is a 2-time veteran of the Vietnam War. Again, he served in many command and staff positions. And one thing I do want to mention is, you do some studying on all of these individuals. I really did not know that you were also in Little Rock in 1957. So we're going to talk about, when you talk about General Sims sending soldiers downrange to help inoculate American citizens, and also soldiers being involved in activities on CONUS. He commanded the, and I want to back up with General Brooks. General Brooks commanded the Big Red One in 2009 to 2010, and he was the commander downrange shortly after the surge was over, and some of the command structure changed, so we'll get to that. General Watts commanded the division between 1984 and 1986, and that was between the time when we are going into this airland battle and the military that we would see in the 1990s and the 2000s. He was a part of making sure our military got to the state that we were at. He is now the president of the Society of the 1st Infantry Division, but also when he got out of the military, he opened his own business, and I believe he may still do some consultancy. Our next panelist is Lieutenant General Retired Thomas G. Grange. He is a He is a 1963 graduate of the Louisiana State University, again, an ROTC graduate. He served 2 tours in Vietnam, and then he also got to command the first ID more than 30 years and a couple of months ago during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So he's going to be able to talk about some of what the division did during Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, his leadership experiences. And after leaving the military, he was a senior vice president and a financial chief of finance officer at the Association of the United States Military. And again, 34 years in the military, many command and staff positions over the years. Our next panelist is Lieutenant General retired Perry L. Wiggins. He is a 1983 graduate of Mercer University and ROTC graduate. He is a aviator by trade, I believe. He can fly many aircraft in the Army inventory. Again, served in many command and staff positions. He also served in the Balkans. He also served in Iraq downrange, and he commanded the 1st Infantry Division 2008 to 2009, and that was a critical period as well. He was in command when there were soldiers in CONUS and overseas, and when the surge began to end. And so there's a lot of complexities of how do you command in that environment. As a civilian retiree, never a civilian, a former soldier, excuse me, sir. He is, and I want to make sure I get the title exactly right, the executive director of the Governor's Military Council. So a lot of leadership experiences after the military that he can share with us as well. And last but not least is Major General retired David L. Grange. He is a 1970 graduate of North Georgia College. I believe I got the North Georgia College. And he spent, coming out of college in 1970, and the Vietnam War is drawn down, but he also still spent 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. He was in Iran in 1980 during the Iran crisis. He also deployed during Operation Urgent Fury, which is Grenada in 1983, the Gulf War, and he commanded the first ID during the Balkan Wars when we were in that implementation, stabilization, and Kosovo forces when we are doing a peacekeeping mission, but really what were the complexities of making sure what we call rules of engagement are implemented so we don't have a tactical incident that causes a strategic mistake. He's also Special Forces, and so a distinguished panel. So I did not do it justice, I guarantee you, but right at 7 minutes. So we're gonna go ahead and get started so we can hear from our panelists. Okay, so I wanna start, we have many questions, and so we weaved. Laura and I, as of 2 hours ago, were still taking questions in. So I wanna start with you, General Sims, with the first question. Those who have served, but Laura, did I forget anything?
No, you're good to go.
Okay, good. Those who have served have different pathways to military service, whether it be by choice, and prior to 1973, whether it be by the draft, and also whether it be by family tradition. What was it that brought you into military service?
Well, Krewasky, first of all, big thanks to you and to Laura for putting tonight together. And, special recognition to everyone out there who has worn or is currently wearing the Big Red One on this, a pretty important day, 104 years in history. We started that celebration here this morning early, and it's been a great day, part of a great week here as we celebrate Victory Week with this incredible division. So personally, I come from an Army family. My father, I tell people who are out here, my folks come from just two small farm towns outside of Kansas City. My father, his town was 1,200 people, and there was no chance he'd have gone to college if he hadn't gone to West Point. Went to West Point, graduated in 1966, had no idea what West Point was about really when he got there. Certainly didn't clearly understand what he was getting into with the Army, but ended up making that a career and stayed in 27 years, retired as Lieutenant Colonel. And I tell people all the time, my dad would still be in uniform if they'd let him. If they'd let him, he would still be in uniform today. He looked at both West Point and at the Army as providing him the life that he had, and that he ultimately was able to pass off to my brother and I. And I think that, certainly as I was growing up, I don't know that I knew anything different. I think it was probably always in my bones, in my blood, that I was going to be in the Army. I took a detour for 1 year before I ended up going to West Point, and then graduated from West Point. And I'll tell you, I haven't looked back. I mean, I think if you ask most of the panelists here, and by the way, just to be on this list of people is pretty extraordinary. To be the junior member, I'm real honored with that. But if you ask folks, my guess is they tell you there were times during their career where they little intermissions where they may have thought, maybe I'll try something different. I wasn't unlike any of that. I saw a chance there early in my career as a senior lieutenant and captain where I thought I might get out of the service. And it was an experience with a bunch of young officers that really kept me in, and I haven't looked back. So, I'll hold there because I know you got a lot to get through, Krewasky, but for me, it was this connection through my family and this trajectory. This is what's so great about the Army, how the Army can change the trajectory of a person's life. I saw that with my father, certainly impacted mine, and it's fun to watch with soldiers and others here and elsewhere.
Okay, great. So family tradition, absolutely. General Brooks.
Let me also just say thanks, Krewasky, for arranging this to you and Laura. And what an honor it is to be on with these Danger Sixes. It's such a distinguished group, and it's just good to see all of you once again. I'll be brief. I also am from a military background. My father was a career officer, and my brother is a career officer. I was slow to join the family business, having really been interested in medicine as I was growing up. But late in my senior year, I decided I think I want to go toward the military, and sought out military academy. I was fortunate to be recruited as an athlete by Coach K, the basketball coach, which accelerated my entry into the academy. And then once I was there, I realized that this is the life for me. Like DA just said, I mean, there's certainly that point in time once you get into your career where you go, okay, can I do something else now? I mean, should I stick with this or try something different? And I was about one step out and realized that there was something special and unique about military service, especially about being a leader in the military, that I wasn't sure I'd be able to find anywhere else. I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know where I could find it. And then I discovered it was right where I was already operating in the military. And that's what kept me on for the longer career.
Okay, great. And I did miss a few things. I was going to, because we have a lot of educators, and we talked about this, where a lot of our audience don't have a military background. So Danger 6 is a call sign. It's the military call sign. And so every unit has a title before, whether it's lion or tarantula or a scorpion. And Danger is that nomenclature for the big red 1. And 6 is the number for commander. And so there is a lion 6, perhaps a scorpion 6, and there may be a tarantula 6. So 6, when you hear Danger 6 come on the mic, everyone knows it's the division commander. Just when you hear Danger 7, it's the senior non-commissioned officer. So forgive me for missing that. So let's go to General Watts.
Krewasky and Laura, thank you very much for including me in this event. I might count to have about 133 people that have, great Americans that have tuned in this evening. And I'm honored, along with my fellow division commanders, to be a part of that. I grew up in Southwest Missouri, down in the Ozarks. Had no connection at all with the military, no family history of extended military service. And I went to a land grant college in Southeast Kansas, And the first 2 years of ROTC, first 2 years of college, the ROTC program was mandatory. So I had no choice. And that was my basic exposure to the military, if you will, as a ROTC cadet. We had excellent cadre sergeants. I learned a lot from that I carried over the years about the importance of non-commissioned officers. And those cadre sergeants inspired me. They invited me to join the advanced ROTC program, which I did, which led to a regular Army commission as a distinguished military graduate. And I had 33 great years of active duty. Obviously, some of them better than others, but by and large, I was honored to serve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. General Rain.
I grew up in Louisiana. My father was a senior master sergeant, E7, which was as high as you could go when he retired. He's a World War II vet of the Army Air Corps, retired out of the United States Air Force. I remember him as when I was a senior of sitting me down and saying, "Hey boy, you have to figure out this thing called the draft, because you're too healthy and you're going to serve. You got to figure out how you're going to do that." So like General Watts, I went to LSU, and lo and behold, it was a land grant college, and the first 2 years of ROTC were required. And I went and transitioned into the advanced part of it because my dad had convinced me that it would be better to serve as an officer rather than an enlisted man. That was his view. And I remember at my commissioning how proud he was to see his son as a butter bar second lieutenant. But yet, Krewasky, when I came in the Army, my intent was to come in, serve 3 years, come back, take my CPA, be an accountant in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and catch white perch and eat crawfish the rest of my life. But what changed my mind was a war in Vietnam. The soldiers, and I was in the 1st Cavalry Division, and there were intense fighting. And the soldiers in that division absolutely convinced me that they needed leadership. They wanted leaders, and it would be a tragic mistake for me to leave the Army and leave them behind. And I just could not do that. And I fell in love with the Army, and I served 34 years. I don't regret a day I served. And but my proudest moment was serving in this great division. And today, June the 8th, is our birthday. And by golly, it's a big day in a big red one, just to be a big red one soldier. And I'm so proud to have been a part of it in my life and humbled by the opportunity it gave me.
Thank you, sir. Absolutely. And that was in my notes, but I knew that at least 1 or 2 of you would mention today is the birthday. So thank you.
Yep.
General Wiggins.
Yeah, Krewasky. First off, once again, let me echo the rest of the panel here. It's humbling to be a part of this group, and so I consider it an honor and a privilege. I kind of stumbled into the Army. I came from a military family, but my dad told me I probably wasn't wired right for the Army or for the Air Force. I tried to major in baseball and fraternity in college. And the first at bat I had against a guy that could throw about a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, I knew baseball was not going to be for me. And I needed to find another career. And so I was dating a young lady in college, and her expectation was we were going to get married right out of college. And she expected me to have a job. So I went to the recruiter there on the university grounds, and he told me, "Hey, sign this dotted line. You'll do a lot of orienteering, hiking, camping, and kayaking." And I said, "Man, that's for me." But I didn't know I'd signed up for ROTC, to be honest with you, until I got back to my dorm room and I realized I'd signed up for really MS2, MS1, which are military science 1 and 2 courses. I discovered that I liked the military and the regiment that was offered. And I like the individuals. I found out that they're just quality people in the military, and they have expectations, they have standards, they have goals, and that was me in a nutshell. As my dad had a very disciplined, we had a very disciplined family, primarily because my older brother, he broke down all the barriers for ill discipline, And I was the resultant of all the discipline the family could handle on the second go around. So, you know, for me, I kind of stumbled in it, thought I would do about 6 years and do my commitment and depart the military. But I fell in love with the individuals. I fell in love with the camaraderie. I fell in love with the organization, the esprit de corps, and sports and the military go hand in hand. So athletes are ideally suited, in my opinion, to be a part of the military because we're all about team. We're all about, you know, being a part of a team. And the military gave that to me. And so I'm blessed. I consider myself blessed for 33 years at Word of Cloth Nation. And I got to serve along great Americans like you see on this panel. So that's my story.
Okay, great. And forgive me, I was getting to General Grange, but I forgot we're going to talk about leadership in the military and post-military. And so currently, General Grange is the president of Osprey Global Solutions. And, you know, I am at the 1st Division Museum. Our parent is the Robert R. McCormick Foundation, and he also served as the president and CEO. I believe it was right after you got out of the military, sir, for 10 years of the Robert R. McCormick Foundation. So General Grange.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Am I on mute?
No, we can hear you.
No, I'm
No,
good. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so again, thank you very much. I was down, I wasn't very good in high school. I was down in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. My father was down as a liaison with the Air Commando School at Herbert, down by Eglin Air Force Base. And like was mentioned by someone else, I was also 1A draft. And which is fine. I didn't mind that. That was what was going to happen. That was fine. And my father asked me to try out to a couple of schools, and North Georgia College accepted me. And I went in there not knowing what it was all about, even though I was from a military family. And they got me squared away pretty quick. And so from that experience, I did fairly well and was commissioned out of North Georgia as a lieutenant of infantry. And I went to the 82nd Airborne and kind of argued, fought, and that to get over to Vietnam. So a few months later, I did go to Vietnam, to the 101st, and stayed here 2 years. And actually, my father was there at the same time. So we served together in Vietnam. Both times I was wounded. He was there, not right there, but you know, in I Corps. And so we really got close, obviously, with that experience. And I was very fortunate with him in the military family, being a World War II Korean Vietnam veteran, to teach me how to be an infantryman. So he was probably my number one mentor, though I was very fortunate to have many. But that's how I got into the military, and I loved it, lived it, bleed it, green, OD green. I mean, it was my life. And when I was selected to have the honor to command the Big Red One, it was an interesting. I think General Rain may have been there, but I was told to go to one of the hotels for lunch with General Sullivan and about 3 other Danger Sixes, and they told me exactly how I was going to act and what I was going to do. And I followed those orders when I took over the colors as the Big Red One commander.
Okay, well, great. I mean, this has been great. So many similarities. So I'm not going to tell any of my stories, but there were a lot that was just pouring out on me. So General Watts, I want to start with you with this next question. There are many amazing Danger Six stories throughout the history of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One. Now that you are among that history, can you share some of your experiences as Danger Six and those who served with you?
So it might be helpful to provide a little background information here. At the time I was the commanding general of the 1st Division, was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, and we had a complete set of combat equipment located at Fort Riley with us. But we also had a wartime set of equipment stored in Germany, which if we deployed from Riley, Kansas to Germany, we would leave the equipment at Fort Riley, fly to Germany, pick up that set of equipment out of storage and go to war. So this presented additional training challenges of learning to operate different weapon systems, because in some cases, The equipment wasn't of the same modernization era, so to speak. And at the same time, we knew it was real because the Soviet Union and NATO standoff in Europe was a real thing. So we were never sure when the NATO might attack, the Russians might attack. And we were the first division to deploy from the United States should there be conflict between the Soviet Union and NATO forces. So we had the challenge of staying trained. But in this environment, we also had to, our biggest mission was getting to the fight, if you will. We had to deploy from Fort Riley, move the entire division, then draw the equipment. So we had a set of training that we had to do just to be able to get to the fight. Then we also had the set of training and standards that we had to do to be in the fight. So it was a great motivator to focus our trainings, if you will, both at Riley and at the National Training Center. And concurrent with the training, we were starting to integrate modernized equipment into the division. The 1st Infantry Division was the first to field a multiple launch rocket system, MLRS, at Fort Riley. So throughout those challenges, we never lost focus on the need to develop our leaders and maintain high training standards. Thank you.
Okay, so absolutely, yeah, deploying to return of forces to Germany. So any other Danger 6, would you like to address that same question now that you are among the history of Danger 6s? Tell some of your experiences during the time that you were serving, or any other story about a Danger 6. And this is a question that came in 2 different fashions from people writing us. A previous Danger 6 that inspired you, or a story that you know of a past Danger 6? Anyone?
Well, Krewasky, Tom Ray, the highlight of my command at Fort Riley was we had trained the division to do what General Watts before us had to defend NATO. Lo and behold, we were going to join the 7th Corps, same Corps, but we were going to the Mideast to do it, and we weren't leaving all our equipment, we were taking it all. And it was come as you are, no time to get ready. Get yourself over there alerted in November and be ready by the end of January. And oh, by the way, by the end of February, you're fighting. So the highlight of my life was being humble, being proud enough to be selected to do that function and watch the young people of America and to watch the difference between the army which we fought before in Vietnam and this modern volunteer army, which is made up of a very diverse population of people of gender and race at all ranks, and to watch the pride of those teams and the small units function against the 4th largest army in the world, which quite frankly didn't do very well against those very proud young people that fought for America in Desert Storm. And for 100 hours, the division went balls to the wall. And we wound up, when it was all over, penetrating probably, well, I know we penetrated deeper than any division in the 7th Corps. And we were very fortunate enough to lose a very small number, 27 Americans in the process. But that was my proudest moment. I remember, though, the inspiration. There's a guy named William Depew that commanded this division as we started building it to really what you call hard, tough standards of training. I remember General Depew saying, if I can see you, I can hit you. If I can hit you, I can kill you. Those words drove the training program before and after we got into Saudi Arabia with the system we have, particularly the Bradley fighting vehicle with a tow and a 23 millimeter, and this M1A1 tank with a DU ammo and how accurate it was. General Depew, a very visionary general of this division, he was dead right on what he said, because the technology and the skill of the people behind the guns that philosophy absolutely came to 100% accuracy.
Absolutely. And I want to come to that for a second. General Brooks, I'm going to put you on the spot in a second, so get ready, because I know you are a historian in a sense, but we're going to come back to your time in service, General Rain, because General
Okay.
Watts comes out of command in '86. You're in command during the war in '91, and so that transition. But you know, another Danger Six. So there was a Danger Six who was actually killed in action in Vietnam, General Keith Ware. That's one of our questions that came in, and some of the folks wanted to know if any of the Danger Sixes wanted to address that commander, Major General Keith Ware from the Vietnam War. So General Brooks, can I ask you to address that?
Sure, I'll be happy to comment on it. You know, and anytime you serve in the Big Red One, you're going to be experiencing tremendous moments of pride and honor, and serving with some amazing people. And that is from generation to generation. In the previous question, you were asking about inspirations, former Danger Sixes, and there you can run the entire list. You want to start early on with Charles Summerall, or you want to go to Clarence Huebner? Who do you want to pick? Anyone along the way. Pick anyone on the screen, and you will also find that you can gain tremendous inspiration from them. But the one you just asked about, General Keith L. Ware, what an amazing story. So two of our generals tonight were talking about potentially being draftees. Well, Keith Ware was a draftee also in 1941. He was drafted into the Army. 2 years later, he has now advanced 5 ranks. So he's a lieutenant colonel. He goes from being a second lieutenant to being a lieutenant colonel. And he's commanding a large organization, the 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry, part of another division, the 3rd Infantry Division, another gallant division, and finds himself in his small units pinned down, and puts himself into personal danger to try to get things going. He ultimately earns the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for valor. Well, he could have done, you know, just parades and things like that for the rest of his career if he wanted to, but Keith Ware was a soldier, and he found himself volunteering to go to Vietnam, and ultimately was given command of the Big Red One. So here's a Medal of Honor recipient who years earlier in 1944 received the medal, and now he's serving as the commanding general of the division. Unfortunately, his helicopter was shot down as he was leading this division, the Big Red One, in combat, was hit by anti-aircraft fire, and he and everyone aboard the aircraft lost their lives. Interestingly, in his mid-time before going to be Danger Six, he served as the Deputy Chief of Information, which is now called the Deputy Chief of Public Affairs, and then the Chief of Public Affairs for the U.S. Army. So he was the prime communicator for the Army. I found myself in exactly the same situation there, as the Deputy Chief of Public Affairs for the Army, then the Chief of Public Affairs. That was not my background or forte, nor was it his. But you get called to do a mission and you do your duty first. That's our motto. That's what he did. And he yearned to get back to being with troops again, being an infantryman as he was. And unfortunately paid the ultimate sacrifice. But he'd been decorated multiple times with the top 4 awards for valor that the nation can give. He was wounded in action 3 different occasions. And just a tremendous, tremendous example for all of us.
Okay, great. And we had 2 questions come in related to General Ware, so thank you for that. So General Rames, I want to come back to you briefly, and I do want to set the stage. You know, when you talk about the military that you got to lead, that was crafted in part by men and women like General Watts, but also, you know, the question I want to ask is, there is no I in team. When talking about teamwork, this is especially true in the military. Soldiers often work in joint operation situations, whether it be with coalition or other services. Now, during the Gulf War, as you mentioned, you were in the 7th Corps, you know, 18th Corps is to your left, and you penetrated across the line, and you had to pass another nation division through your passage of lines. Can you talk a little bit about the leadership challenges and some of the fog of war, as Clausewitz would call it? And then, of course, your division does go and penetrate the furthest than any other division in the 7th Corps.
In my service time, I had the opportunity to work with partnership units in Germany from the German army when I was over there as a battalion and brigade commander. But in Desert Storm, our mission from 7th Corps was to penetrate the Iraqi defense, hold it, and bring forward the 1st United Kingdom Armored Division, which was a 2-brigade division, and pass them through us so that they could broke off to the right side of the 7th Corps and begin that attack on the right side of the Corps and protect the right side for the Corps commander. My experience in working with any particularly foreign army or someone you don't know is, from the leadership perspective, it's not something you can delegate to some staff officer to figure out for you and make it all happen. I find that, first of all, personal involvement of the leaders, face-to-face, talking with their staffs, with their commanders, is the best way to break down communication so that everybody is working off the same sheet of music. Beyond that, in the conceptual form, that has to be translated down also into sand table exercises, into map exercises. And given time, I know it's hard for people to believe, but we actually, in the desert with a Corps commander standing there, we rehearsed the passage of lines of a British brigade through a US brigade in the 1st Infantry Division. Behind the lines, before we attacked, with a full dress rehearsal where everybody was watching and we were focused on lessons learned. What you're trying to do is take all the guesswork out of military operations when you're dealing, and the key to the thing is communications. And you'll find usually that foreign nation particularly, even though the British speak English, they don't have comm systems that we can net with. So the interchange of communication with the interchange of liaison officers at division and brigade level were essential to facilitate the rapid movement of information within the thing. But that was my experience, is personal involvement. Rehearse every detail that you can before you execute. And it's just a matter of getting coordination done. It's very hard work. It's very hard work.
Coordination and communication. So General Grange, I want to pivot to you, and I saw your mic off earlier, so maybe you can come back to the previous question, but I want to ask another question, and I also want to set the stage that I believe, and any of you feel free to correct something I may say that's not quite right, but I believe you actually took command of the Big Red One in theater during the Bosnian War in 1997. And this is when things had been sort of smooth for a while, but they began to erupt. This is supposed to be a peacekeeping operation, but we have these 3 factions going at each other, and then a 4th one that props up with different consternations in Kosovo. But this is the question I want to address to you as you think about that. As an officer who has achieved the rank of general, you know and understand better than most the phrase, the mission, the men, and certainly in today's military, the men and women, and then me. And so putting soldiers before you is key, you know, the beans, the bullets, and the fuel. So that led, I'm sure, to some of your success. Can you share how you as a commander was successful by not only leading and communicating, but also taking care of your soldiers when there are minefields, when there are people who are not happy that you are there, and the rules of engagement is very strict?
Sure. This 97 to 99 was probably one of the hardest things I've done in my military career. It was actually, I thought it was harder than combat. because it wasn't as clear. First of all, we did 3 different missions, actually. We did a peacekeeping mission, which is in chapter 6. So think of a UN Blue Beret. That was in Macedonia. 1 battalion at a time would rotate down there, a lot of patrols. And if you recall, we had 3 actually prisoners taken by Serbia at the time. We got them back. But the one piece on that was that at one day the troops had blue berets on. The next day I flew down and we gave them a new mission to chapter 7, which is peace enforcement. All right, the use of force in a more kinetic manner. It could be with a sniper, it could be with a tank. It just depended on how you employed your troops to task and what the particular environment asked to do at the time. We also did in Bosnia, I replaced General Miggs, Big Red 1 commander. He was already there. But what happened is that things started getting tough between Republika Srpska and then the rest of the Bosnia-Herzegovina. That mission was peace enforcement, and we actually had 17 Big Red 1 soldiers wounded in that peace enforcement operation. And so when you think of fog of war or fog of conflict, there's a lot of irregular warfare type actions going on. What helped me a little bit is I had a lot of special operations background, which I employed into a heavy unit, which at least helped me and some of the people that we had. I mean, that was Task Force Eagle, and we had 17 countries in a coalition. So like General Rames said, you had to personally go around to every commander, which keep in mind, even though there's rules of engagement for that NATO force, it doesn't mean that that country has the same rules of engagement. So your subordinate commanders from other nationalities would always call back and say, hey, Danger 6 wants me to do this. Can I do it? So quite often, I would say probably 50% of the time, we would have to retask and have American units do the mission because their country said they couldn't do it. So that was extremely difficult, and the heavy burden was on the Americans. Hardly any problems with the units that were attached, like British and that, but they had a different sector. But anyway, the third mission was Kosovo. So instead of 3 factions, you had 2 factions. So initially we went in to protect Kosovo Muslims. Then we ended up, when they came back, protecting Serbs.
Right.
So it shifted back and forth. And if you recall, that's the time where Pristina was captured by the Russian paratroopers out of Bosnia. And the only thing that helped us is they worked for us in Bosnia, and we were able to persuade them to let other nations use that airfield and not kill each other. So a very, very demanding, confusing time for all ranks in the division on rules of engagement, taking care of their fellow soldier, and accomplishing what they were told to do. So I'll just stop there because I could go on on that one.
Absolutely. And there was something key you said, and I don't want that to be lost on our audience, that it was tougher than combat in many cases because the rules of engagement are very strict. So General Wiggins and General Brooks, I want you guys to keep that thought in mind, but I do have a question, and many came in, and this could only be directed at one person. So it's for you, General Grange. A question is coming in. How difficult was the transition from the 75th Ranger and the CAG and coming into the 1ID? And the CAG, I believe, is the other name from Delta Force. So again, we said, you were a special operator. So this person is asking, how difficult was that transition from the 75th Ranger, Delta Force, and then going to, and they say, a regular Army unit?
Yeah, so, the Army is not like the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps, if you ask, what did you do? Someone will say, I was a Marine. Quite often in the Army, someone will answer, I was a paratrooper.
Right.
I was a tanker, whatever. It's kind of interesting, right?
Yes.
First of all, you should say soldier, but that's beside the point. It's just because of the culture of certain types of units in the United States Army because of its size. Anyway, I was lucky to be able to be an ADC-S and an ADC-M in the 3rd Infantry Division, Iraq of the Marne, to learn how to do heavy stuff. I mean, the first time I was in an American tank, not a foreign tank, but American tank, was as an ADC, a 1-star general in the 3ID. So it was a little bit of a shock for me. But I had some great brigade commanders. I had a great a DISCOM commander that I met with every day that trained me and helped me learn about heavy units. And what's interesting about this whole thing is when you go into combat or you go into any kind of mission, you're always combining heavy, light, and soft. We do. Yet sometimes we don't appreciate as much as we should when we're in one of those units. But I can say that heavy helped me in soft later on when I did some other things, and soft helped me in heavy. And take Hohenfeld's a maneuver training center, getting armor units through a defile, where they usually die in the mock battle because you don't have enough infantry guys, dismounts, to clear the defile. And so we use some. I always brought in an SF team. I'd bring in a light unit from the down in Italy, from CTAP they called it then, to augment my heavy unit. And I always gave a heavy unit to them. They always gave me a light unit, or I'd bring in a company out of Great Britain or out of France, or someone to augment my fighters.
Right.
And so that's really kind of how I employed it. And I just had to learn from great mentors that were younger than me to catch up.
Yeah, and just a couple of things for our audience out there. So a key thing that was mentioned, you know, the ADCS and the M. So each one of these commanders always had at least 2 1-stars. There was a support deputy commander, and there was a maneuver deputy commander. So that's what General Grange is referring to. But I want to pivot to you, General Wiggins, and then General Brooks. We talked about the little scene between Rain and Watts. There was a 2-year gap, but General Brooks, you took command right after General Wiggins. So I kind of want to start with you, General Wiggins. You took command, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. The surge was coming to an end. The surge ended while you were in command. You have soldiers in 4 different provinces downrange. And your headquarters flag, I believe, is somewhere else. I want you to talk about that. And then General Brooks, you come into command, and now the entire command structure has been changed. We're going from multinational forces, Iraq, Corps, and the transition teams, and now you become the commander of U.S. Forces South. So General Wiggins, talk to us about the fog of war and how you are a leader in an environment like that.
Well, you know, I was blessed to follow really General Durbin, who really set conditions. But you know, we were really segmented as a division initially, because you had the Iraqi assistance group. So the division, a 1-star general, the ADC, that same person you talked about, for maneuver, had taken a flag and went downrange and was working downrange as the assistance group training Iraqis, which to me was kind of odd, to be honest with you, because the division colors needed to be with the division. So shortly after I got there, the division colors did come back to Fort Riley. We rejoined, but a little known footnote in the 1st Infantry Division's history that kind of gets glossed over is that we had what was called MIT teams, military training teams, that are groups of small groups of individuals that come together in about a 6 to 8 week period, trained up, and then deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq. Similar to the special operators that you hear General Grange talking about, except they didn't have nearly the amount of training that is required to do those types of missions. And I will tell you, in the short amount of time they had to do them. So literally, we sent these individuals over. They wore the 1st Infantry Division patch. They served for 8 months, 12 months, and then they would return home. We would demobilize those particular formations. They would go back into the Army force. And you one story I'd like to tell you about a family called Westbrooks. When I came into the division, we had a soldier that was killed in action in Afghanistan. And I went to Farmington, New Mexico to do what we do for our soldiers, which is we honor our soldiers. So every soldier knows that they're going to be honored if they're fallen in combat or on the field of battle. And so I felt honored to go there. I went, I met the family. And in the course of talking to this family, I found out that they lost another son in the New Mexico National Guard in Iraq. And so it really hit me hard that we had formations, these small groups of individuals that were all over Afghanistan and Iraq doing great work and wearing the division patch. And so I really took it upon myself to make sure I kind of learned about the mission. I knew where they were at, and that we kept track of these individuals, even though it was very difficult for the staff to do so. I know that I was relieved when General Brooks came on board, and I was able to pass it off to him because, I probably gave him a organization that had a lot of loose ends, but I knew he had a staff that could take that on and really mold it. They had to get ready in a relatively short period of time as a division and really go into the war fight. So I'll pass that over to General Brooks and let you give him his assessment when he came into the division. But we were really just starting to come back together after really being separated and being in Iraq and Afghanistan, and really as a divisional staff being focused in two different AORs. And that was difficult for the staff. They did an incredible job. One thing about the 1st Infantry Division is we seem to get superstars, and it's evident by those that really come out of the ranks and move on to really important positions in our Army. And I had a brigade commander named Joe Martin, who went on and now is the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. Eric Wesley was the MIT team commander, who went on to become a 3-star and really did great things for our futures. So those are the heroes of the division. And really it's through their strengths and through their competencies and their intellectual acumen that really kept the division on track in a very confusing time when we were ramping back down from the surge, but at the same time had a lot of small organizations in Afghanistan and Iraq. So General Brooks, sir.
And before you start again, and so I just want to be clear. So, so you are in mainly Fort Riley, and you are sending soldiers downrange. But the good thing is you had that visualization, having been downrange in a previous unit. So yeah, General Brooks, I'm not going to try to set the stage. In the interest of time, I'm going to let you just pick up that scene and talk about the complexities that transpire as you become the commander of the United States Division South, I believe, and the command structure is completely changing.
First, it was an honor to follow Perry Wiggins. So not only in this question, but in command. All commanders build on the successes of their predecessors. And so every one of us is linked as a daisy chain, without a doubt. We were also fortunate to share the same top enlisted soldier, and that is Command Sergeant Major Jim Champagne, who served both of us and was an important part of the continuity for the headquarters. It was interesting that the division had not been given orders to go to the combat zone since the command of Major General John Batiste a few years earlier, right at the early years of our operations in Iraq. And so the division had just come up to now have the headquarters committed over into the combat zone. The environment was changing very rapidly. As you mentioned, the surge in Iraq was coming down, but a surge was rising for Afghanistan. We had these teams that General Wiggins talked about who were very important to helping indigenous military capabilities, something that historically was done by special forces, but now had to be done on a much larger scale. And these teams are actually making a difference out there and improving the professionalism of the Iraqi forces, especially in the Afghan security forces as well. So our mission was to secure and stabilize the southern half of Iraq. So we had everything from Baghdad all the way down to the Saudi Arabian border and the border with Kuwait. So it was the area that was mostly populated by Shiite Muslims who had been oppressed by Saddam Hussein, but were a majority in the population. And in some cases were significantly influenced by Iran. And we found our operations very much like what General Grange was describing during his time in the Balkans. It's sometimes more confusing than engaging in combat to destroy something, to penetrate something, to seize something, when it's very difficult to find out who your adversary is. And so our units, interestingly, were not the subordinate brigades of the Big Red One. By this point in time, the Army had changed its configurations into brigade combat teams. These are things that have infantry, armor, artillery, logistics, engineers, intelligence, all built in the same package. They're like small divisions, and they were being committed in different places. As General Wiggins mentioned, like General Joe Martin, then Colonel Joe Martin. When I took command, Joe was already in West Baghdad and was operating under a different division headquarters, but wearing the Big Red One patch nevertheless. So we ended up sharing everyone else's kids. That's kind of what it looks like across the Army. I didn't have any Big Red One patched units underneath of me, but had 5 different patches underneath of me from different divisions at a given point in time. There was a lot of goodness in that, honestly, in terms of realizing, as Dave Grange mentioned a little while ago, hey, you learn something from each kind of unit. And there are things that are brought together from the cultures of different units that enhance everybody. And we found that was the case there. The parent headquarters for the U.S. Division South, as it was called, was the Big Red One. And outside of our headquarters in Basra, we flew the U.S. Division South flag and the Big Red One flag. And it was just an honor to be able to be danger forward once again to carry the division flag into the combat zone.
Outstanding. So General Sims, I'm coming to you in a second, so get ready, but I do want to tie up some ends too, and tie General Grange and General Brooks together as Big Red One commanders, but task force commanders. So what you're getting at, General Brooks, correct me if I'm wrong, is you are also task force victory commander. And I looked at the order of battle, I believe it was like 12 or 13 different patches. So kind of a dual command, and General Grange, Task Force Eagle. So not only the Big Red One, am I characterizing that correctly? Or either one of you want to add something to that, or is that about right?
Yeah, I could, if it's all right. Yeah, on Task Force Eagle, keep in mind, we still had half the division back in Germany.
Exactly.
I mean, I went through 6, 7 ADCs. It was kind of wild because you still had some war plans that you had to prepare for. You still had tank tables, gunnery. I mean, you still had all these things you had to do. And so you went back periodically, back and forth, actually, on an aircraft to spend some time with, and it was tough because you're getting calls all the time to do the other thing in Task Force Eagle. But that, the types of units was extraordinary, the different types of units. And just because someone has a cavalry unit in one country, it may not look exactly like yours. It's definitely different equipment, right? And so and you had to know a little bit about it in order to make plans and coordinate with these people. So you're commanding at least a half a division back in Germany, and you're commanding over 20,000 something people down in Bosnia. One's training for war, one's training for peace enforcement. That's quite a task list. Now you add that to STRAC, ammunition for training. You add that to 350-1 training requirements, all the way from the Army down to FORSCOM, to Corps, to Division, all the way down. And there's not enough time to do that. There's not enough days. And you got people switching back and forth. So this is extraordinary. And I'm sure General Brooks went through kind of the same thing in Iraq. So, you got to be flexible, and you really have to depend on some people. People really have to be dependable, your subordinates, these brigade commanders and other specialized task force underneath you in order to do these missions.
So in interest of time, go ahead, General Brooks.
Let me just add one point to that, and I certainly agree with Dave Grange's comments. This really is alluding to what happens when you reduce the size of the military, in this case, reducing the size of the Army, but the engagement around the world rises. And so the loads that are placed on our military leaders nowadays in this environment of complexity is very unlike the way it was for Robert Bullard in World War I or Clarence Hubner in World War II. They had a very, very specific mission. They had all of their units. They were concentrated geographically, maybe across a few miles, but we generally now are across several continents. And DA Sims is living that today. So the complexity is significantly greater, and the kind of leader that we have to have at a much more junior grade must contend with things that would have been unheard of 60 years ago.
Absolutely, and that was the segue. So let me kind of set the stage a little for you, General Sims. Talking about the different missions, training for battle, training for peacekeeping, deterrence. You just had soldiers come back from cities in the United States helping to inoculate American citizens against COVID-19. If I'm not mistaken, you have soldiers not only in Fort Riley, you have soldiers in Korea, you have soldiers in Europe, and I believe you have soldiers in the Middle East, and perhaps some other locations. So talk to us about what General Brooks just said, the tremendous weight of being a commander and a leader with forces all over the globe, training for different missions, I believe.
Yeah, Krewasky, I think, first of all, I'd highlight what a couple of others said. And as General Brooks was alluding to there, or mentioned in his comments about trust in your leadership. I think the Army does a pretty good job of selecting our battalion, brigade commanders and command sergeants major. And I think in the end, we put a lot of trust in those men and women as we send them to various places. But we also, the relationships between the leaders that inherit those organizations, those are important relationships as well. And sharing information or talking to one another as we prepare for those operations, and then maintaining contact while they're in theater. So, I'll give you a great example. So the 1st Combat Aviation Brigade sitting in Europe right now, we've been in constant contact with UCOM and USER as they prepare to go with the organization that they replaced. And then as they're forward, we still maintain comms with them, communications with them, as well as U.S. Army Europe as they continue to execute operations. Now, that said, we hand off operational control when they get in those locations. It's not possible. If we're back at Fort Riley, not possible for us to be able to keep a tighter rein on those organizations. But I think it works out pretty well. And as I said, I do think that we select the right people, the right men and women to lead these organizations wherever they end up being in whatever geographic theater.
Yeah, so I'm getting the 30-minute warning, so I want to get some more questions in. We have a lot of questions, so absolutely. I mean, it's a tough task. This is a question that is very interesting, and we have a lot of educators and students tuning in. Which class did you take in college that prepared you for your military service and leader and rise to general officer?
I'm thinking, is that question for me, Krewasky? If that question's for me.
It's for anyone, but yeah, you can take it, General Sims.
I'll tell you, it was calculus. And the reason it was calculus is because I failed it in my plebe year at West Point, and it sent me to the summer term academic program. Very few people have the honor of being accepted to that program. But I just think, what I learned from failing calculus was, I had to reapply myself. And when I did that, I was able to make the connection between study and homework and progress, and between, sustaining hard work and progress. And although I'm not sure I like calculus to this day, calculus was probably the one class in college that helped me get to where I am. Okay,
great. Anyone else?
This sounds like a crazy one, but I spent my time in the Army after I served under General Watts when I was a battalion commander in Germany. He doesn't even realize what he taught me about resource management. I spent my time after serving under him spending other people's money in the Army. Everybody is running around saving everything till the last minute so they don't run out of things at the end of the year. I shot every round of ammo that I had. I spent my maintenance dollar on my stuff. And we resource management learned from a business background that I have at Syracuse and at LSU, and the service under General Watts led me to do that. Resource management is a big deal in this man's army if you want to take care of your people. It's a big deal.
Absolutely. We have about 3 or 4 questions along this particular line, but you served in the military, you were a leader, and 5 of you are now civilian leaders. How has your leadership skills that you gained as a soldier enhance your success now that you are a retired soldier? And maybe General Wiggins, I would like you, I mean, you're the executive director of the Governor's Council, and then I would like some others to jump in and talk to us how that transition has been for you.
Well, thanks, Krewasky. Bottom line for me, culturally, the transition was difficult. Culturally, we are different, but value-wise, the same integral values that my parents placed in me and my grandparents placed in me, I entered with those into the military. And then the Army helped refine those. And really, values are critical, especially integrity. We talk about doing what's right when nobody else is looking. Well, when you go into the civilian world, they have those same values. They apply them maybe differently as far as they don't have an acronym. They don't necessarily identify them under the same, words that we use. But there's an expectation you're going to be value-based. And I appreciated that. What I had struggles with was culturally, I see the problem, I see a solution, and I want to apply the solution to the problem. It's easy, right? In the civilian world, it's not necessarily that simple. There are other things out there that I don't necessarily pay attention to. And so it's taken some time for me, and working as the advisor to the governor of the state of Kansas, I have learned more about politics than anybody should ever have to learn. And the deal is, that's something in the military we don't necessarily deal well with. So I have had to, on a number of occasions, just sit back and kind of be a sponge and learn things, which is difficult for a military guy. And so for me, it's been an education. But I think more importantly, military members are ideally suited for the transition into the civilian world because we're mission oriented and we're mission accomplishers. And we're also disciplined in our approach. We understand. And for example, I went in and met with an individual that was dealing with a colonel that was transitioning into his organization in Wichita. And the number one thing he told me is, what I love about this guy, he shows up on time. And I thought that was absolutely dumbfounded me and I couldn't say anything for about 10 minutes. So for me, culturally, it's a challenge, but as far as our values and mission accomplishment, effectiveness, and efficiency, military members are ideally suited for the civilian world and getting out there and making a place for themselves. And I always tell individuals, your reputation is everything. Always maintain your reputation. Don't let somebody else, don't give that up for anything, because after it's all said and done, that's the only thing you can take with you. So that's my 2 cents. So thank you.
Absolutely. TOT, time on target. People lose their lives if we're not on time. Anyone else?
Yeah, can I just a couple points? One, I want to echo what General Rahm said about resource management. I had a very nice transition because of the McCormick Foundation. I mean, look, you have the museum there, it supports the Big Red One. I came out of the Big Red One right before that. They help all over the nation, different programs. They have great partnerships to raise funds for good causes, and very similar to partnerships you have in the military. But since that time, I've been a CEO twice in medical companies, large ones, so division size. And every country, one had 42 different countries we had offices in, the other had 29 offices in different countries. I would say 95% of those countries I had operated in as a soldier, either a partnership for peace or some kind of liaison, or they were in Task Force Eagle, or I work with them, wherever the case may be. How I did that in the military helped me immensely as a CEO in a commercial company. Helped me immensely. And so thinking about the resource management, haven't had, look at the military education system, and then the experience you have in different places around the world. It supports my feeling all the time. You have to have 1 foot in the library and 1 foot in the street.
Absolutely.
And you get that experiential training as well as your education tied together in the military. Same thing in civilian life. So that's what really helped me a lot for 20 years I've been retired.
Great. And so I want to bring you in, General Watts and General Brooks, because a little different. General Watts, correct me if I'm wrong, you opened your own business, and I believe that's what you did mainly when you got out of the military. Talk to us about how your military service helped you be successful as one who founded and started and ran your own business.
Well, I would just say, I echo what the previous division commanders said. The values that we have in the military transition very easily to civilian life. I found as I went around working with industry as a consultant that they're looking for people that have military experience because of our values. And if I had to zero in on one value, I always zero in on integrity, because we were always taught in the military that our word was our bond. And if we ever lied, we lost our credibility. And I found that to be true in civilian life, in the civilian business world. If you can't be honest with the people that you're advising or working for, you lose your credibility pretty fast. So I always zero in on the integrity portion of that.
And General Brooks, has only been 2 years, but how has that transitioned to civilian life, and now at least 5 boards and organizations that you are supporting as either the chairman or vice chairman or advisor?
Well, I think there's an awful lot that is carried over, and whether you're at board level or whether you're running something as a CEO or as a consultant, or if you're just one of these people who shows up for work on time, there's an awful lot that translates over from the military experience. What I would say, the roles that I'm fulfilling on boards is mostly bringing an insight about what it takes to lead human beings. Leadership is about leading people. It's not about leading things. It's about leading people. And in the military, we learn to do that year after year, experience after experience. And there's an awful lot we can bring to bear. Secondly, thinking through complexity and thinking through risk is something we do routinely also. You might have to translate the nature of the risk, but not being unfamiliar with risk, not being unfamiliar with a degree of danger that comes with things that you might choose to do or choose to not do. All that translates very, very well into the sorts of things that are being discussed in the boardrooms that I'm a part of.
Thank you, sir. And General Rain, I don't believe I had you comment on this, and I know you served in the AUSA in several different roles. Can you talk to us about, although it was still very much tied to the military, but
Well, Joe Brooks hit it, and it's all about leadership. The one thing that we do in the Army is we develop teams. At least I've always focused on a very decentralized approach to command, because that's the way that you fight, is you fight with platoons and companies and battalions. You don't fight centrally from some high platform. But in civilian industry, as you transition, you have to learn how to listen and to develop subordinates and to create teams to get things done. It's amazing that when you take 9 individuals with all different views and get them working on a team, you can get about 5 things done all at once. And it's but team building is the strength that I found bringing from the military that helped me in the civilian world.
All right, so General Sims, I hope you're like me. Your ears are open. I mean, you are not a civilian yet. You are still on active duty. So I'm going to start with you on this question, and I want everyone else to jump in. So this is a question that came in two different formats, and we wrote it like this. Some of our guests have young people in their lives, or they are teachers. If you could pass on a piece of advice to our future leaders, what would it be?
Yeah, it's
And we'll
pretty
go
easy.
over, yes, General Sims.
That's pretty easy, Krewasky. Be kind, be humble, be thankful. That's what I tell you. Be kind, be humble, be thankful. I was in when I was promoted to general officer, I went to the 1-star course in DC, and my wife and I were sitting in a class, and we were listening to a retired 3-star talk to us about his experiences in the Army. And he was a really wonderful general officer. I mean, he had been a fantastic officer, but you could just tell he was an amazing person. And at the end of it, he said, listen, I'm going to tell you the 3 keys to pretty much everything. And he said those 3 things. And when he said it, I remember my wife and I staring at each other, and just, it was as if, you talk about like you see your whole life before your eyes kind of thing. Like you could see all the things that you had done in life that had gone well, and you could bring them back to one of those 3 things. When my daughter left for college last year, I gave her a note, and at the bottom of the note, it simply said, be kind, be humble, be thankful. I think we can apply that to the leadership that we conduct, in the Army. And I think we certainly apply that to our lives as we move about wherever we are.
Great advice for our young people. General Brooks, and for myself as well.
Yeah, my comment would be just that a life of service to others is a life worth living. That's what we do when we're in uniform, and you continue to serve others when you're on the outside. For those educators who are out there serving those students and preparing them for what's going to be ahead, ensuring that they're going to be better in their future than you were in your past. I think that's a great opportunity to inspire.
Okay, great. General Watts.
Well, I just leave one thought, and I've carried this a long time. It's an honor and a duty to serve your country. And military service, I believe, is a form of insurance that maintains our freedoms. And every generation has to make a payment on that insurance policy to keep our freedoms. So there's no greater honor than having the opportunity to serve in the military and lead the great American men and women that join our service. So I thank you tonight for allowing me to participate in this discussion.
Thank you, sir. General Rain.
Mine would focus around the value system. I think I've learned in life that with young people, you need to develop your value system early. Your integrity counts for something. And when things go wrong, it's about all you have to rely on is your own confidence and your own integrity and your own moral values. And people watch what you do, and they do and emulate what you do. And you want to set the example for those people. So you got to develop your own value system very, very early.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to the next 2, but I'm going to kind of put Laura on the spot in case we have 2 more minutes. Laura, I want you to look at our sheet, and if there's a question that I didn't ask that you would like me to try to get to. So I'm now going to go to General Wiggins on the same question.
Yeah, I always had a saying, and it said anything worth attaining is worth the hard work. And, you have to work hard to get. And so I've always stuck with that. And then in the military life, I told people that balance is key. I always had 3 priorities: God, family, and the military. And you got to keep that in focus, and you got to maintain balance because, careers can be a hard taskmaster. My dad told me when he pinned on my 2nd lieutenant bar, the Air Force didn't call him when he retired and asked him how he was doing, but my mom was there with a cup of coffee saying, get out of bed. It's 10 a.m. I got about 1,000 honeydews for you to do. So family's important. Maintain those relationships because relationships really carry the day, and they're what makes life worthwhile. So that's the things I took, and that's the thing I would pass on to them. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, but to me, it's the balance. Maintain balance and maintain your priorities.
Thank you. General Grange.
Yeah, we're all citizens, whether you're a GI or you're a civilian. We're all citizens of this country, and what that means is that everybody has to contribute. And I believe that the things I always think about is being tough, but being compassionate. And being tough, I mean self-discipline. I mean being dependable. I mean being a contributor to others around you, to the organization you're a part of, to whether it be or your family, friends, or fellow citizens. You have to be tough in that regard, and then be compassionate. And it goes back to being the thank you, humble, those things that were already mentioned, but that's the compassionate part.
Okay, well, for one who spent 25 years in the military and having the opportunity to talk to 6 former Dangerous Sixes and to hear your stories and a lot of similarities in my background, this has been just an outstanding night for me. But Laura needed 2 minutes at the end to do some advertisement. But Laura, we still have about 4 minutes, and we have tons of questions. Is there one that was burning in you that I did not ask?
You know what? I'm going to go ahead, and if you'll allow me, Krewasky, I'm going to ask the last question. So I'll even throw you in the mix if you'd like to put any input.
That's what I want you to do. I need help here.
Absolutely. No. I'll pass the mic back over this way. We talked a lot about so many inspiring stories of former Danger Sixes this evening, and we talked a lot about inspiration and how do we inspire things. And I want to talk a little bit about the term courage really quickly. And there are numerous stories from the history of the First Division that we can draw inspiration of stories of courage from. And I do, I'll point out the big one. We just passed the anniversary of D-Day this past week, and it takes extreme amount of courage to, storm the beaches of Normandy and do those actions. But I actually want to explore a little bit of a different type of courage. And I'm going to mention another former Danger Six, and that is Major General Cliff Andrus, who was the commanding general during the Battle of the Bulge. And he was the recipient of the Soldier's Medal for saving a young girl from drowning in Hawaii. And let's talk a little bit about the courage of doing the right thing off of the battlefield, being brave both on and off, and doing the right thing when nobody is looking, choosing to do the right thing. And I didn't know if anybody had any input on how can we inspire that in future generations? Not all of us are going to be on a battlefield in the future. So how can we inspire that type of courage off of the battlefield?
Well, I've always said that it's a quote from, I don't know whether John Wayne really said it or not, but I give him credit for it. And that is, courage is the ability to saddle up when you're afraid. And courage is the ability, in my view, to be able to be a buffer for your subordinates, because there's a lot of things that they're supposed to do in training, etc., and they just can't do them all. So it takes courage on the part of leaders to say, okay, I'm going to protect you from that. Don't worry about that task. You do these tasks because these are the important ones. So courage comes in many forms, battlefield and leadership, I think.
Often you'll hear stories about the physical courage, the physical examples of courage. But what you've alluded to, Laura, is about moral courage. It's the ability to choose the right thing to do, whether it's popular or not, whether someone's watching or not. And that's not an easy thing to do. That has to be practiced over time and learned. But for everyone who has the opportunity to make a tough call in their own lives, all it counts is that one time. And that can make a big difference in your own life and in the life of others.
Thank you for that.
Laura, it doesn't matter whether you're a small manager or you're a big division, everything your people do will not always go right. Things will happen which are not good, but yet you or managers want to make themselves continue to look good, and they sweep things under the rug. Moral courage is that which you maintain your values. You got to drag it out and you got to deal with it, and you got to take the corrective action that's necessary, because it will not go away. Over time, it's going to come back to haunt you. And as Perry said before, your integrity is all you've got. And once you lose it, you'll never get it back. So you might as well deal with it.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I really just appreciate all of the questions. If our guests will provide me just a little bit of grace to wrap up the evening, I'm going to share my screen one more time. I want to tell you about some other upcoming events that are happening here at the museum, all featuring other 1st Division veterans. First, coming up this Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Time is going to be a conversation with 1st Division D-Day veteran Charles Norman Shea, who's going to be tuning in with us from Normandy, France, where he currently lives, to tell us a little bit about his experiences serving with the 1st Infantry Division on D-Day. You can register for that program via Zoom at firstdivisionmuseum.org. Also, in July, we have our very popular monthly series, Date with History, where we're going to be meeting with a 1st Division veteran who's going to tell, Hugh Mills, who's going to tell us about his experience in Vietnam and his book, Low Level Hell, a scout pilot in the Big Red One. You can also register for that Zoom meeting at firstdivisionmuseum.org. And if you have not read this book, I highly suggest it. It's very good. And then last but certainly not least, on Wednesday, June 3rd, if you are in the Chicagoland area and you're able to stop by Cantini Park in the 1st Division Museum, you will be able to enjoy a concert by the 1st Infantry Division Band, who's going to be playing some country and some classic rock for us. So I hope everybody will be able to join us for those events. Again, the 1st Division Band is not available virtually. That is an in-person event. So you will have to come to 1st Division Museum. I apologize that it says register at the bottom. You do not need to register for that program to show up and enjoy the day.
And Laura,
All right.
that is June 30th, correct?
Correct. June 30th. It's a Wednesday evening. The park is open late. Enjoy some music. Head into the museum. It will be great. Gentlemen.
And General Sims.
Yeah, special thank to General Sims for getting us the band. Thank you so much. We're looking for, and the Commanding General's Mounted Color Guard will also be here. And we always get excited when there's horses on property. It's always exciting. All right, gentlemen. I wanted to thank you so much on behalf of all of our guests who tuned in this evening. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. They are greatly appreciated. To all of our guests, thank you for joining us and choosing to spend your evening with us. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Feel free to reach out. Krewasky, thank you for your excellent moderation. And everybody have a wonderful evening.
Time on target. Laura said we're going to end at 8:30. Dangerous Sixes. Thank you.
Duty
Thank you very
first.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Have a
Duty
great evening.
first.
Good night, gentlemen. We'll see
Duty
you
first.
soon. Duty first.